San Diego County moving into one of the state's less restrictive reopening tiers, what it means for local businesses and how they're adjusting. Elsewhere across the U.S., cases on the rise. What health officials are learning about the virus that could be playing a big factor. And weeks later, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department shedding new light on that crash that left Tiger Woods with major injuries. What they say caused it. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
ABC 10 News starts now with breaking news.
Well, good morning. Great to have you here. I'm Jim Patton, and we start with that breaking news. New details about that crash that left Tiger Woods with serious injuries. Los Angeles County Sheriff now saying Woods was going nearly twice the speed limit when he crashed. Crash happened on February morning as Woods was heading to a golf course. Sheriff says Woods was going between 84 and 87 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone before he lost control and went flying down an embankment. Now, authorities say they don't believe any sort of intoxication played a role in the crash, and when pressed about why they didn't test for intoxication, here's how they responded.
As they interviewed him at the scene and at the hospital, the questions were asked, and there was nothing to indicate any type of intoxication. He did answer those questions. He did not. He stated he didn't drink. He didn't. There's nothing. He's not under. He wasn't taking any medication. So those questions were asked and answered.
Last week, the LA sheriff said they determined the cause of the crash, but weren't releasing it due to privacy concerns. Sheriff's Department today saying there are no plans to charge or cite Woods for speeding, as there were no witnesses. Well, today, San Diego once again moving up the state's tier list, now in the less restrictive orange tier. That is one below California's least restrictive tier. And so here's a quick look at what that means for businesses and more around the county. Restaurants, movie theaters, places of worship, museums, all allowed to fill up to 50% their indoor capacity. Other places allowed to bump up their indoor capacity. Outdoor live events and theme parks will be allowed to have more people. And bars now allowed to serve people outdoors only, but without food requirements. Well, restaurants, one of the industries that have drawn a lot of attention from the pandemic all the time along, and these changes, of course, expected to have a significant impact on them. ABC 10 News reporter Marie Cornell shows us how they're adjusting and what customers think.
Starting Wednesday, restaurants like Breakfast Republic will be able to seat more people indoors. Here at this Mission Valley location, they can have 25 people inside in addition to their outdoor dining. Now that San Diego County is in the orange tier, restaurants can serve their customers indoors at 50% capacity. News manager of Breakfast Republic, April Labastida, has been anxiously waiting for.
It feels good to be open again, busy and making money.
Though they've expanded their seating available inside, we saw more people choosing to sit outside.
I just think because, well, it's San Diego, so the weather's really nice, and I like the seating outside. That's why I prefer it.
While news of the tier change was welcomed by some,
hopefully we can all get back to normal pretty soon.
Others, like Brianne Welch, says she'd like things to move slower. But she's hoping restaurants continue offering outdoor dining when everything is said and done.
There's still the outdoor option, so I think that having the choice is good. I think that should still be the choice of having both.
Marie Cornell, ABC 10 News.
Well, that, of course, coming on the heels of the announcement from the governor's office outlining a full statewide reopening. First told you about that right here at ABC 10 News at 11. State outlining plans to ditch the tier system and remove restrictions in every county. The plan is to do that by June 15th. A mask mandate would remain in effect for some situations as a safety precaution. It all hinges on having enough vaccine supply and driving cases and hospitalizations down.
We're headed in the right direction because of what we've done and the protections we put in place, not in spite of it.
In the meantime, people are urged to continue social distancing and wearing masks and getting vaccinated when you can make an appointment. Meanwhile, nationwide, the CDC saying one of the coronavirus variants has become the most dominant form of the virus in the U.S. CDC saying the mutation known as the UK variant is now the most common form of the virus here. Scientists say the variant is more contagious and potentially more harmful than the original version. So far, research has suggested, though, that the vaccines that have been approved in the U.S. are effective against this mutation. Well, the rise of the variants causing increased spread in several parts of the country, raising new concerns as officials race to get more people vaccinated before another widespread surge. ABC's Ijaki has more on the situation across the U.S.
Nurses in Dearborn, Michigan, dressed in protective equipment, gearing up for a shift they say is starting to feel unfortunately familiar.
We're seeing the numbers go up, and we're still seeing that sick patient population coming in.
Don Holland says the ER at Michigan's Beaumont Hospital is swelling with COVID patients.
We can definitely feel that there is an uptick, for the sick patient coming in.
Today, Michigan leads the nation in new COVID cases over the last week. Health experts say as many as 70% of new infections there are from the contagious UK variant. This time, the patients are younger, like 28-year-old Pedro Gonzalez, a once healthy adult, now fighting for his life, nearing his third week on a ventilator.
I thought he was going to be fine. I was like, oh, he'll be fine in a few days. He's young, he's strong. Nothing's going to happen.
Dr. Fauci says what's happening now in Michigan is also happening in spots across the country.
We're seeing more and more young people get into serious trouble.
Cases among the young and unvaccinated are growing. The CDC is warning about outbreaks among the young, many tied to youth sports and extracurricular activities. COVID cases are climbing in 19 states and deaths increasing in 21 states. President Biden urging Americans to register for a COVID shot, moving up his deadline for states to make all Americans eligible for the vaccine to April 19th, 2 weeks earlier than he'd promised.
No more confusing rules. No more confusing restrictions.
So far, 38 states have already opened vaccinations for everyone 16 and older. 42% of adults have already received at least one dose of the vaccine, including 80% of teachers, school staff, and childcare workers. President Biden says it's progress that must continue.
Even moving at the record speed we're moving at, we're not even halfway through vaccinating over 300 million Americans.
Now, the president reiterated that he'd like to see people get together in small groups by Independence Day. Ike Ajaji, ABC News, Washington.
That's a controversial topic in Chula Vista this evening. The city is hosting a public forum on the police department's automated license plate reader program. The department says it's an important crime-fighting tool, but some residents have raised privacy concerns. It goes back to last December after reports that the police department was sharing data with some of the federal immigration agencies through a third-party system provider. Police say they were unaware of it and immediately stopped sharing with those agencies. Virtual forum begins at 4 p.m. Well, your voice, your vote, an update in the special election primary to fill the seat representing District 79 in the State Assembly. And here are the results. Dr. Akila Weber has a commanding 52% in the race to take over the seat from her mother, and this makes a June runoff election unlikely. Republican Marco Contreras is second with 33%. As the Derek Chauvin trial continues, a use of force expert among those being called to the stand to weigh in on the tactics the officer used on George Floyd. Court TV's Chanley Painter has more.
Derek Chauvin's defense is having an opportunity to cross-examine the state's use of force expert from the Los Angeles Police Department, the first in a series of paid experts who will testify on behalf of the prosecution here. Sergeant Jody Steiger was asked by prosecutors his opinion on the force Derek Chauvin used on George Floyd May 25th, 2020.
And based upon your review of these materials and in light of the Graham factors, what is your opinion as to the degree of force used by the defendant on Mr. Floyd on the date in question?
My opinion was that the force was excessive.
Sergeant Steiger did say the officers were justified using force against George Floyd when he was resisting and being placed in the patrol car, but that should have changed when he was on the ground. During opening statements, Defense Attorney Eric Nelson said that evidence would show Chauvin did exactly what he was trained to do, and the prosecution witnesses are testifying that is not the case. So far on cross-examination, Eric Nelson is pointing out that this is the first time Steiger has testified as a paid expert and trying to distinguish some of his policies against the Minneapolis Police Department policies on use of force. Today, we're expecting to hear from more investigators on the case for the prosecution. And that's the latest from here in downtown Minneapolis. I'm Chanley Painter with Court TV.
And you can keep up with this case and more live on Channel 5.3 or on CourtTV.com.